What if I told you that nearly everything you think you know about dementia is probably an outdated myth? Those terrifying images of complete mental oblivion that your imagination conjures up, they're just one side of a very complex reality, and not the most accurate side either. Today, we're going to talk about dementia, but we won't treat it like a dreaded, inevitable sentence. Instead, we'll look at it as a diagnosis that can and must be managed. By the end of this video, you'll understand why there is far more hope than commonly believed and what is actually happening in the brain of someone living with this condition. You'll also discover the crucial difference between calling this a sentence and calling it a diagnosis. First, let's clarify the terminology. The word dementia certainly sounds terrifying, but at its heart, it's not one single specific disease. It is a broad umbrella term describing a whole complex of symptoms linked to a decline in cognitive function. Think of the word fever. A fever isn't a disease itself. It's a symptom that could be caused by the flu, tonsillitis, or 100 other issues. Dementia is exactly the same. It is a syndrome, and it can have many different underlying causes. Historically, any serious decline in mental ability in old age was often dismissed as senility, or senile decay, seen as a natural and unavoidable part of aging. But today, we know that is simply not true. Dementia is the result of specific underlying brain diseases, not just something that happens because you're old. And grasping this crucial distinction is the vital first step towards stopping seeing it as a fatal end and starting to look for solutions. Right, the first and most crucial mistake we often make is thinking that dementia and Alzheimer's are exactly the same thing. Yes, Alzheimer's disease is certainly the commonest cause of dementia, accounting for anywhere between 60 and 80% of all cases. But it is by no means the only option. There are other forms too, each with their own distinct characteristics. Take, for instance, vascular dementia. This develops when the brain's blood supply is disrupted, often following a stroke or a series of mini-strokes. Or perhaps Lewy body dementia, where cognitive difficulties are accompanied by movement problems, very similar to Parkinson's, and often intense visual hallucinations. Then we have frontotemporal dementia, which primarily strikes at a person's behaviour and personality, rather than their memory function. Understanding that dementia comes in different guises is absolutely vital. Why? Because the approach to treatment, the prognosis, and the support strategies all depend entirely upon correctly identifying the root cause. It's exactly like treating a cough without knowing if it's caused by a simple allergy or serious pneumonia. The outcome will be completely different. Let's take a moment to look inside. What exactly is happening in the brain when dementia develops? To put it simply, our brain is a truly gigantic and incredibly intricate network made up of billions of tiny nerve cells, which we call neurons. These cells communicate with each other using electrical and chemical signals, constantly passing information around. Now picture this network as a vast, bustling city, crisscrossed by millions of roads, telephone lines, and essential data cables. When dementia takes hold, and this varies depending on the specific type, these precious neurons begin to suffer damage and eventually die off. The vital connections between them start to break down. Think of it. The telephone lines are severed, the key roads are being ruined. This might start in one small district, then slowly spread to another. Information simply stops travelling as quickly or as efficiently as it once did. For instance, in the case of Alzheimer's disease, we see the build-up of abnormal proteins, specifically beta-amyloid and tau proteins, which form structures known as plaques and tangles. These are toxic to the neurons and literally destroy the network from the inside out. It's crucial to understand that this isn't like a sudden, immediate power cut across the entire city. Instead, it is a gradual, slow dimming of individual districts, which sadly affects more and more areas over time. The second popular myth we often hear is that dementia is simply trouble with your memory. If someone starts forgetting names or where they left their keys, people often jump to the conclusion That's it, it's dementia. But this is a dangerous oversimplification. It's true that memory loss, particularly short-term memory, is often one of the first and most obvious signs, especially when we talk about Alzheimer's disease. Someone might ask you the very same question dozens of times, completely forgetting the answer within minutes. However, dementia is much, much more than just a case of poor memory. It involves the decline of a whole range of vital cognitive functions. This includes damage to their ability to think logically and plan. For instance, a person might find it incredibly hard to cook a familiar meal from a recipe because they can't keep the sequence of steps straight in their mind. They may struggle with language, what we call word-finding difficulties, or have trouble with spatial awareness, perhaps getting lost even in a neighbourhood they've known for years. Their personality can change too. They might become very apathetic, easily irritable, or sometimes they become overly reckless and less inhibited. To ignore these wide-ranging symptoms and just put it down to a bit of forgetfulness is to waste valuable, precious time. So, where exactly is that fine line between ordinary, age-related forgetfulness and those first genuine warning bells? Misplacing your keys is something we all do, at any age. But completely forgetting what keys are even for, that's certainly a very different story. It's perfectly normal to forget an acquaintance's name, only to recall it later. What's worrying is failing to recognise close family members when you see them. Losing the thread of a conversation. That happens sometimes. But struggling to follow the plot of a film or a book all the way through, that's definitely a reason to be alert. The crucial marker is when these cognitive challenges truly start getting in the way of everyday life. If someone can no longer manage a trip to the supermarket because they're confusing the change, or they can't pay their bills because they simply don't understand the instructions on the forms, that's far beyond just getting on a bit. That's a signal to consult a specialist, a neurologist, or a psychiatrist, and this should be approached not with fear, but with the understanding that the sooner a diagnosis is made, the more we can do to help and support that person. So, why is early diagnosis so crucial? Many people mistakenly think, what's the point? It can't be cured anyway. That is a profound misconception. Firstly, not all cognitive issues are irreversible. Sometimes the cause might be depression, a vitamin deficiency, thyroid problems, or even a side effect from existing medication. In those instances, the condition can often be managed, corrected, or even completely reversed. Secondly, even if we are dealing with an incurable form of dementia, early diagnosis is absolutely key to slowing down the progression. There are medications available that, when used in the early stages, can significantly improve cognitive function and hold off the onset of severe symptoms for months or perhaps even years. This gives the individual precious time where they can maintain their independence and quality of life for longer. Furthermore, an early diagnosis gives both the individual and their family crucial time to accept the situation, plan for the future, sort out important legal and financial affairs, and, most importantly, learn how to live effectively with the condition rather than struggling blindly against it. Another common source of fear? Genetics. That thought, my grandmother had dementia, so I'm bound to get it too, stops many of us in our tracks. But let's clear the air on this subject. Yes, genetic predisposition absolutely exists. There are specific genes, for instance, the APOE4 gene. If you have it, your risk of developing Alzheimer's disease is certainly higher. But higher risk is absolutely not the same thing as a guarantee. Think of it like cardiovascular disease. If heart attacks run in your family, your risk is higher, but that doesn't mean you're doomed, does it? Now, truly inherited forms of dementia, the type that passes down with a 50% probability, those exist, but they are extremely rare, accounting for less than 1% of all cases. In the vast majority of situations, genetics is simply one factor among many. And crucially, many of those other factors are things we absolutely can influence. Your genes are not a death sentence. They are simply the hand of cards you were dealt. How you play that hand, however, largely depends on you. And now we come to perhaps the most encouraging part of our discussion, the aspect that is truly within our control, that is, our lifestyle. Decades of research have shown a definitive link between the health of our body and the health of our brain. Put simply, what's good for the heart is good for the head. And number one on that list is physical activity. Regular exercise, even just getting out for a brisk walk, improves blood flow to the brain and actively stimulates the growth of new neurons and vital connections. Secondly, we look at nutrition. The Mediterranean approach, rich in vegetables, fruits, oily fish, olive oil, and nuts, is consistently cited as one of the best ways to protect the brain. Cut back on the sugar and minimise processed foods, and your brain will certainly thank you for it. Our third key area is quality sleep. It is while we sleep that the brain literally cleanses itself of waste products and toxins, including that tricky protein known as beta amyloid. Chronic lack of sleep is quite literally poisoning our minds. Finally, monitoring your blood pressure, controlling your cholesterol levels, and managing blood sugar. These efforts aren't just about preventing heart attacks and strokes, they are also a powerful defense against dementia. But there is another factor that is just as crucial: mental activity. We call this concept cognitive reserve. Think of it as your brain's intellectual safety net, or buffer. This reserve is built up throughout your entire life by getting an education, learning new things, and solving complex problems. Every time you learn a foreign language, master a musical instrument, read a challenging book, or even just tackle a difficult crossword puzzle, you are doing much more than simply exercising your brain. You are actually building new neural connections, new bypass routes. If a disease damages one of the brain's main information highways, your brain can redirect that data along these backup routes. Someone with a large cognitive reserve can resist the effects of illness for much longer. Even if pathological changes have already begun, the symptoms may not show up for a long time, simply because the brain has found ways to compensate for the damage. That is why it is truly never too late to start learning. Any new activity that challenges you is the absolute best investment you can make in the long-term health of your brain. And we mustn't underestimate the power of social connections either. Humans are fundamentally social creatures, and our brains actually evolved to thrive on interaction. Loneliness and social isolation are proven, recognized risk factors for developing dementia. When we talk to others, our brains are working hard. We're choosing the right words, reading the other person's body language, analyzing the conversation, and keeping the dialogue going. It's essentially a comprehensive workout for all the different parts of the brain. Meeting up with friends, joining clubs or interest groups, volunteering, or even just having a regular chat on the phone with family. All of these activities keep our minds in good shape. Conversely, when someone retreats behind closed doors, their brain is deprived of that essential stimulation. It can start to get rusty from lack of use. That's why keeping an active social life, whatever your age, isn't just about fun. It's a vital necessity for keeping your mind sharp and clear. So please don't let yourself, or those you care about, drift into isolation. But what exactly does modern medicine propose? Let's be frank. As of today, that magic bullet, the single pill that cures Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, simply doesn't exist. We have to face that truth. However, that doesn't mean medical science is powerless. There is a whole host of tools available to help manage symptoms and significantly improve the quality of life. We have medications that can temporarily boost memory and concentration, and sometimes slow the disease's progression. There are also effective drugs to tackle associated problems such as depression, anxiety, sleep disturbances, and aggression. Crucially, non-pharmacological approaches are rapidly developing too. Cognitive training, art therapy, and music therapy. These methods help people maintain existing skills and find new positive ways to express themselves. Science, rest assured, is not standing still. Hundreds of global studies are underway, testing new drugs and innovative methods. While a definitive breakthrough hasn't happened yet, every year we learn more about the brain and the underlying mechanisms of dementia. What medicine offers today is not a cure, but powerful, sustained support. To reject that support is to deny yourself and your loved ones the chance for the best possible life. Let's take a moment to really consider what the world looks like through the eyes of someone living with dementia. It's much more than just forgetting names. It's a world where the very structure of a reality begins to break down. Imagine waking up in a completely unfamiliar room, having absolutely no idea where you are, or even what year it is. Loved ones look like strangers, and simple everyday items, the spoons, the forks, the telephone, lose all meaning and purpose. Sounds and lights can become painfully overwhelming or sharp. The predictable routine of life vanishes, replaced by a constant state of deep anxiety, fear, and utter confusion. Many of the challenging behaviours that exhaust carers, the repetitive questions, the restless pacing, even moments of aggression, aren't spiteful or deliberately intended to annoy. More often than not, they are survival strategies, desperate attempts to cope with that internal panic, trying to regain a sense of control and safety in a world that has become entirely foreign and terrifying. Understanding this fundamental truth is the real key to patience and empathy. The person isn't being difficult, they are genuinely distressed. Our role, then, isn't to get cross or frustrated, but to actively try and become an anchor of safety and predictability for them amidst the chaos. How exactly should we communicate with a loved one living with dementia? Previous methods of communication may cease to be effective, which often causes frustration for both parties. Here are a few simple guidelines. Speak slowly, clearly, and use simple, short sentences. Ask closed questions that can be answered with a straightforward yes or no, instead of open-ended ones that require a detailed response. For instance, instead of asking, "What would you like for dinner?" try, "Would you prefer the chicken or the fish?" Make eye contact and use the person's name to gently capture their attention. Use non-verbal cues, a smile, a gentle touch, or clear gestures. It is vital not to argue or try to prove the person is wrong, especially if their memories or perception of reality are distorted. Arguing is pointless and will only heighten their anxiety. Instead of stating, "Your mother passed away 10 years ago," it is better to gently redirect the conversation. You could ask, "Tell me about your mum. What was she like?" Your primary goal is not to correct a factual error, but to provide emotional comfort and ensure the person feels truly heard and understood. It is equally important to create a safe and friendly environment at home. For someone living with dementia, their world often shrinks to their immediate surroundings, so this space must be easy to navigate and predictable. Remove any loose rugs or mats that could cause a trip hazard. Ensure there is good lighting, particularly during the night, to prevent falls. You can use bright labels or clear signage on doors, perhaps indicating toilet or bedroom. It's sensible to remove dangerous items from easy access, such as sharp knives, household chemicals, and all medications. Try to maintain a consistent daily routine, waking up, eating, going for walks, and going to bed at the same time each day. This routine builds stability and reduces anxiety. Put up a large clock and calendar where they can be easily seen. It is vital not to overwhelm the individual with new items or by rearranging the furniture. The goal here isn't to create a sterile hospital environment, but rather to adapt a familiar house so that it remains comfortable and homely, while simultaneously helping the person stay oriented and avoid everyday accidents. Let us turn our attention now to those who often remain in the shadows. We're talking about the dementia carers, the spouses, the children, and the grandchildren. Dementia isn't just an illness that affects one person. It takes a toll on the whole family. Looking after someone with dementia is truly a marathon, not a sprint. It demands enormous physical reserves, and even more significantly, huge emotional resources. The constant strain, feelings of guilt, resentment, helplessness, and chronic fatigue, all of this eventually leads to what we call carer burnout. This is a very real and dangerous condition. It is vital to remember this simple rule. To look after someone else, you must first look after yourself. You simply cannot pour from an empty jug. Please don't feel awkward or ashamed asking other relatives and friends for help. Seek out carer support groups where you can share your worries and anxieties with others who truly understand what you're going through. Make sure you carve out time just for yourself, time for rest and your own interests, even if it's only an hour a day. Looking after your own needs is not selfishness. It is a necessary requirement if you're to continue giving quality care to your loved one. Nowadays, technology is truly here to lend a helping hand. Of course, it can never replace genuine human care, but it can certainly make life much easier and significantly boost security. Take GPS trackers, for instance. You can get them as bracelets, key rings, or even cleverly tucked into shoe insoles. They allow you to keep track of a person's location and immediately alert you if they wander outside a preset, safe zone. This is a real godsend for families whose loved ones are prone to wandering off. Then there are simple sensors, things like motion detectors or door alarms, that can let you know if someone has got out of bed during the night or is heading outside the house. Smart pill dispensers, fitted with timers and little sound alarms, are fantastic for reminding people exactly when they need to take their medication. And for staying connected, there are those straightforward phones with big buttons and photo contacts that make keeping in touch a breeze. Even basic voice assistants, like Alexa, can answer simple questions, put on your favourite music, or remind you about the day's appointments. In short, technology can be a genuinely reliable and handy helper. It takes some of the routine worries off your mind and provides a valuable extra layer of safety and peace of mind. When seeking hope, people often turn towards alternative therapies and so-called folk remedies. The internet is absolutely buzzing with headlines promising miracle herbs or secret diets that claim they can cure dementia. It is crucial to proceed with extreme caution. As things stand, there is no scientifically proven folk remedy available that can stop or reverse the progression of dementia. Some supplements, such as ginkgo biloba or omega-3 fatty acids, have shown very contradictory results in clinical studies and cannot be considered a comprehensive treatment. What's more concerning is that certain herbs and supplements can interact negatively with prescription medications, potentially causing serious harm. Any alternative treatment methods must be thoroughly discussed with your treating doctor or specialist. Do not let desperation or the false promises of unscrupulous individuals steer you away from the path of evidence-based medicine. Following bogus advice can cost you not only money, but also the valuable time and health of your loved one. One of the most painful aspects of living with dementia is the stigma, the negative label that society often attaches to sufferers and their families. Dementia is still something people feel ashamed of. It is frequently hidden away. Inappropriate jokes about losing your memory or being senile cut deeply and cause real hurt. Fear and misunderstanding from those around them often lead to families becoming socially isolated. Friends stop visiting because they simply don't know how to act or what to say. Strangers might stare or give disapproving looks when a person with dementia behaves in a way they deem odd. This stigma prevents people from seeking help early on, all because they feel too embarrassed to admit it. It causes individuals to feel both guilty and intensely lonely. It is crucial that we discuss dementia openly, honestly, and with the utmost respect. It is an illness just like diabetes or heart failure. A person living with dementia is not mad or merely a shell of their former self. They are a human being who deserves dignity, respect, and compassion, just like anyone else facing a difficult ailment. Tackling this stigma is a responsibility we all share. Even when facing a difficult diagnosis like this, it's vital to remember that life hasn't finished. It certainly changes, yes, but it absolutely goes on. We hear so many stories of people who have lived with dementia for years, sometimes even decades, maintaining their ability to enjoy things, to love, and even to create. Take the wonderful British author Terry Pratchett, creator of the famous Discworld series. After his diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, he didn't just continue writing books, he also became a passionate advocate for the rights of people living with dementia. It is so important to shift our focus from what a person has lost to what they still have. They might no longer be able to hold a complex conversation, but they can still thoroughly enjoy music. They might not remember the events of yesterday, but they can beautifully recall the songs of their youth. Emotional memory often remains long after the intellectual memory has faded. A person may not remember your name, but they will absolutely feel your love, your care, and your warmth. And it is these precious, here and now moments that become the greatest treasure. And finally, let's cast our minds forward. What does the future hold for us in terms of understanding and treating dementia? Science, I'm pleased to say, is making enormous strides. Researchers are now able to diagnose Alzheimer's disease long before the first symptoms even show up. They can do this either by analysing the fluid around the spine or by using specialised brain scanning techniques. This truly opens up the possibility for early intervention, catching the disease quickly. Crucially, new medications are actively being developed, and these are not just aiming at the symptoms. They are targeting the actual mechanisms of the disease, those notorious amyloid plaques and tau tangles that build up in the brain. Scientists are also exploring groundbreaking treatments such as gene therapy and various methods of brain stimulation. Furthermore, a great deal of effort is now focused on understanding risk factors and effective prevention strategies. Scientists across the globe are united by one singular goal: to find a way to defeat dementia entirely. While we are still some distance from that final victory, every day brings us closer. The future no longer looks quite as bleak as it might have done 10 or 20 years ago. And that, I believe, is the biggest reason for optimism we have. So, is dementia a life sentence or simply a diagnosis? After everything we've discussed today, I think the answer is quite clear. It is a diagnosis, a tough one, certainly life-altering, but still a diagnosis. And a diagnosis, unlike a life sentence, allows for a plan of action. It means looking for solutions, adapting our approach, and fighting for every day of quality life. We've established that dementia is much more than just old age, and certainly more than just memory loss. Crucially, we've learned that the risk of developing it can, and indeed should, be influenced by our lifestyle, our diet, and keeping our minds active. We've seen that early diagnosis isn't just a formality, it's a genuine opportunity to slow the progression of the illness. And perhaps, most important of all, we must remember that behind every diagnosis there remains a person, an individual who deserves our love, our patience, and our respect. Thank you so much for watching this important video right through to the end. If you learned something new today, please do give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our future discussions on complex topics. Now, what myths about dementia have you encountered in your own life? Or perhaps you have a personal story you feel ready to share. Do let us know in the comments below, and we can continue this vital discussion together.